Thank you and welcome back to this final segment of the show for today. The topic is the perceptions of race and nationality in the United States. And of course, we have with us Dr. ESchmeller to talk about these perceptions. Dr. Schmeller, during this last segment, let's give you an opportunity to sort of move this whole issue of race from the pre-Columbian era on up to immediately after the Civil War, if you so desire, and to talk and to give us some directions in terms of the separation of the races and segregation and how race played an important role in reference to that. I think that that would be quite profitable to do that.
Okay. Well, and something you'd mentioned just before the break about the Caribbean, that's kind of a rich area for study, and one of the travelers I look at is Mary Seacole, a black nurse from Jamaica. She's well known to the nursing students that we have at TSU. They study her. But she traveled to Panama and had a lot of contact with white Americans prior to the Civil War. And her kind of experience gave a unique look at how a black woman on her own kind of had to deal with race. And her kind of experience kind of started moving me a little forward with the work, thinking that she obviously held the British up as kind of ideal. She's a black woman. Her mother had been a slave and had married a Scottish army officer, and she was the offspring of that marriage.
She was a mulatto.
Yes, so it makes it, I mean, definitely what we were kind of talking about earlier kind of brings that in. She defined herself as English. She took great pride in being English. Every opportunity she had to make fun of Americans, she took. Most of the Americans she met were extremely racist and commented on her color, and one even offered to bleach her, which she didn't take very kindly. But that kind of interested me. Why would an English woman whose mother had been a slave, black English woman, why would she still kind of be so attached to her nation? And definitely the English end slavery before the Americans do, 1833. And they kind of hold themselves up as the moral center in a lot of ways among the European nations. Like, look, we've abolished slavery, why can't you? And I wanted to look at Americans. We definitely, the white Americans definitely kind of look to England as their kind of cultural origins. And why not follow? And obviously there's economic issues involved here. But as you move after the Civil War, it was troubling that I found that the English travelers started to display the same kind of racist attitudes you saw among the white Americans.
It was different before the war ended, but as long as Africans were enslaved.
As long as there was something to fight for, and you could talk about you know, freedoms and kind of abstract concepts regarding slavery and all human equality, etc. But once slavery was ended, that kind of racist undertone kind of seems to come forward in the English travelers. And it never really disappeared, obviously, as you well know, in America before and after the Civil War. And in fact, some would argue Reconstruction, the period 1865 to 1877, was just as bad or worse than it had been before. So I argue that to some extent it probably has to do with the fact that both England and the United States, after the Civil War, begin to get involved in imperialism, especially going to Africa. And one of my American black travelers, Thomas L. Johnson, a preacher, wanted to go to Africa and convert the Africans. And his experiences in America were very frustrating to him because he was an educated man and wanted to do good in Africa, but illness kind of forced him to return. And he's one of my only travelers who actually completely gives up his American identity and he becomes a British citizen over the issue of race. He sees an America of the 1880s that it's not going to change. He doesn't feel that America is capable of the kind of, I guess, opening up and not seeing his color and seeing him as a man instead.
Well, you know, when you deal with this, the issue of the separation of the races in America following the period, after the Reconstruction period, did you find any kind of identification that you, dealing with this, that you could bring into that period that would sort of justify Plessy versus Ferguson, the beginning of the separation of
yeah.
the races in this country?
Definitely. The white English travelers, they frequently referred to something as the Negro question, the Negro problem.
Okay.
What are we going to do with them? The English, coming over here, felt that they could comment on the American problem better than Americans could. And yeah, definitely that's where that kind of racist kind of attitudes toward now African Americans really does kind of feed into definitely the separate but equal. There's only certain things that these people are capable of. And usually, going back to the issue of miscegenation, the argument that they frequently used, when thrown in the face with, here's a Frederick Douglass. He's an educated man. Obviously, he shouldn't be, spending his life digging ditches. The argument would come out that, well, it's because he has white blood in him. And that's when you start to really see this kind of focus on Anglo-Saxonism.
Good. Okay, good.
And the Anglo-Saxon heritage. Ultimately leading to, if you really stretch this, arguments for separate but equal, and ultimately even social Darwinism and eugenics, when you take it to the extreme, obviously, with picking certain characteristics from one race as being superior to another. And I take it up to